when we are sharing facts and stories and things that we've accomplished, if we have an outcome that we want to come from that, I think it helps us be authentic and it helps us to be confident about those things because it leads into something rather than just sharing to share.
Hello, everyone. This is Kathy Caprino, and welcome to my podcast, Finding Brave. I've created this show for everyone who longs to create something bold and brave in their life, to rise up, speak up, and stand up for who they are, and to reach their highest and biggest visions. Each week, I'll be speaking with inspiring guests from all walks of business, leadership, entertainment, the creative arts, and the entrepreneurial world. And they'll be sharing their intimate stories of finding brave and offer their best strategies for building your most rewarding, joyful, and meaningful life, business, and career. Hey folks, Kathy here. Are you ready for a big positive shift in how you're working and what you're achieving today in your career? Let's make that happen for you. While you might know me best as a podcast host and a writer, a key focus in my work is helping women experience greater success and achieve their biggest goals in the quickest, most effective way possible. In my 6-session career and leadership breakthrough one-on-one coaching program, I help women get what they want most, which includes more confidence, impact, advancement, financial reward, and fulfillment. I've worked with over 20,000 women across 6 continents, and before that, I served as a therapist, and before that, I was a corporate VP, managing multi-million-dollar budgets and global initiatives. I bring all of that experience to our work together, helping you build a new chapter that aligns with who you really are and what you're ready to create. Check out kathycaprino.com/career breakthrough, and I hope you'll register now. I'd love to support you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Finding Brave. This comes to you, I believe, in April. Well, I love April, and boy, am I ready for it. I live in Connecticut. We've had a cold winter, but I know not nearly as difficult as what many other people are going through. But I hope wherever you are, it's a beautiful day for you. And I am so excited to have. Wait a minute, I gotta change my little screen. There we go, perfect. So that I can look up here.
Yeah.
Have our guest today, John Lyndon, and it's such a very cool story how we first even got on each other's radar.
That's
A
right.
long time ago. And I always love to say how I learned of my guests. But John, I'm going to read to everybody about your bio, but you have been such a LinkedIn enthusiast from kind of the beginning. Is that
Yeah,
not right? A long
that's right. A
time.
long time, a long time. Over
And
a
I think
sure.
when I first emerged on the platform, you somehow knew, and I'm sure you were instrumental in some of the wonderful stuff that happened. But what we're talking about today, I got the perfect title: How to Turn LinkedIn into Your #1 Business and Career Growth Tool. I'm so excited about it, John. Thank you for taking the time from
Yeah,
Toronto.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm
I'm,
excited for the
I'm really,
conversation.
I'm thrilled to do it. So let me tell you all about John. John Lyndon is the CEO of Lyndon Consulting, an independent strategic advisory that partners with global companies and executive leaders with their technology strategy, with a focus on what they do and pay for on LinkedIn. And John spends his time working on corporate LinkedIn talent and sales programs, executive thought leadership, and as a professional brand advisor to professional athletes. So cool. As
Right.
they look to life beyond sport. And I can tell you, folks, in one recent conversation with John, he moved me forward in a big way in how to reach out to new people that inspire you, but they may not know you, and a way to phrase that. And when somebody can move me forward that quickly on LinkedIn, where I'm on it about 5 hours a day, I know you have so
Kind of
much
you.
to teach us. So where I want to start is what you just said to me before we pressed record. I
Mm,
asked you, what's the biggest thing that maybe people don't quite understand, or what is kind
Yeah.
of the living, breathing mantra that you hold about LinkedIn. Will you share that again with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel that there's still a lot of misconception about social media and digital platforms. And the way that I think about LinkedIn
Yeah,
is a human connection tool. And it,
human
it creates a
connection.
pathway to opportunity at scale. And so, how can we use it to help people get to trust and credibility as quickly as possible? And to do that through your branding of yourself, who you are, what you care about, what your passions, what are you good at. I feel when we look at LinkedIn in that lens, it helps shape everything else that we do and then get us closer to those outcomes that we're trying to achieve for our business, for ourselves, and the success that we're looking to find. So.
I mean, you make it sound very easy, and I feel exactly as you do. LinkedIn has been an enormous game changer for me, but a
Mm.
personal growth
Yeah,
changer for me
absolutely.
because when you do build a little bit of a following, you realize you could be a role model, you could be a thought leader, you
Yeah.
could share yourself in a bigger way. And I
Hmm.
think when we do that, it's a catalyst for thinking about those questions. Well, who do I want to be in the
Absolutely.
bigger way? But,
Hmm.
but can you tell us what would you say? And some of these questions I haven't prepped you for, so sorry about
Sure.
that.
That's
But you
okay.
live and breathe this, so I know you know.
Mm.
I see a number of misconceptions and false ideas about what LinkedIn is.
Yeah.
Um, I would spew out a few here, but I'd love yours. The first is, I will actually, I'm on it so much during the day that I feel like I know more about how a person is showing up in their career than
Yeah.
they do by looking at LinkedIn. And what
Yeah.
I mean by that is if you're kind of hiding, you don't have a picture,
Hmm.
your headline is your job title, which I never suggest doing when there's no about section or
Yeah.
there's very little content. I think it sometimes means people are really hiding and they're not fully engaged in their career. But a lot of
Yeah.
people say, no, I think it's just for job search.
Yeah. That's right.
So that's misconception number one.
Hmm.
Another, I feel, is just what you and I talked about. Some people use it exclusively as a sales tool, but to me, they do it in a way that's so off-putting
That's right.
that
Authentic.
yeah, it's the opposite of authentic. So, what would I say about that? I think you're using it wrong, people.
Hmm.
And I think you're not going to have success. And in fact, you're going to push away some of the very people you want to connect with.
Yeah.
I'd love your thoughts on that and any other misconceptions that you see really do hurt people. But let's
Yeah.
clear those
Yeah.
up first.
I think it's a great question because I think there still today is a lot of misconception
Yeah,
about LinkedIn or how to use it or how to find that success through it.
right,
And the first one you mentioned, right, is how it's viewed still as that job site only,
right.
right? Which it, was definitely known for, in its early days. And, that was kind of the catalyst for the platform is not only kind of growing your network, but going on there when you need a new job. And it can still be used in that way, but there's just so much more to it now. And,
Yeah.
there's a real ecosystem, I would say, around the platform and what you can do. And a couple of things I'll share on that is,
Right.
taking everyone back into a bit of the history of LinkedIn and kind of how it has evolved from, you know, just a job site or somewhere where you go to upload your online resume and look for a new career or a new job role.
Before
And
you do
so,
that, John, can you tell
yeah,
people your role at LinkedIn and your tenure there and what you did there so people understand you know the
yeah.
ins and outs from a different perspective as an outsider would,
For sure, yeah. I spent almost a decade at LinkedIn, worked across a couple of different roles while I was there in the different business lines. So across talent and people, and then sales as lines of business at
Wow.
LinkedIn. And so when I first started, I was in customer success as LinkedIn was trying to figure out what is customer success to an organization,
Mm.
and how is it different to customer support or advisory or solution consulting? And so they were trying to figure this out,
Mm.
and they kind of added me to that first team
My
of
goodness.
customer success
When did the
reps.
platform begin? Was it 20?
2004. Yeah,
Oh my. Okay. I came
yeah.
on around 2014. All right. Wow.
Yeah, so I started working at LinkedIn at the beginning of 2014 in a customer success role, and then that role changed as I moved throughout the organization. I moved into a talent intelligence role, so looking at the data that LinkedIn has globally and how people look at how they hire, who they hire, the skill development, the transfer of talent from industry to industry or job to job,
Wow.
and that was fascinating. And then I worked in a sales intelligence role. So again, using LinkedIn data to help companies and organizations with how they sell and who they sell to, who's in their target market, using kind of real-time data from LinkedIn. And so, it brings up an interesting point because in 2014, LinkedIn was a very different platform than it is today, right? And so that misconception has carried through the years. In 2014, there was about 300 million members on the platform. Today, there is 1.1 billion members.
Right.
So if we think
But
about
300 million's a lot for back
it's
then,
still a lot
even.
of people.
Good for them. Wow.
And if you think about the 300 million members in 2014
Wow.
who were mainly using it as that networking platform or the place to find a new job, to the 1.1 billion that are using it now, for many, many different things, whether that's building your brand or looking for that next job or marketing for your company, selling products and services, learning new skills with LinkedIn Learning, being a thought leader and sharing content around articles and videos. It's now this ecosystem that has, tremendously changed. And a couple of the other interesting kind of data points that go into that in 2014, it was mainly used on desktop. We see about 47% of the users on LinkedIn were using mobile.
Mm.
That number today is 75%.
Really?
So if you think about the way that people even use LinkedIn and they're using it on their cell phone, their mobile device, and they're using it on their commute to work, or they're using it in the evenings, or they're using it while they're at work. And so, this brings in just a lot of different aspects to how people use the platform or what the platform is designed to help you achieve in your career and to grow your business. And then the last thing I'll mention is just the kind of the revenue side for LinkedIn, because it does impact what they did and how they built products, what we do on LinkedIn versus today.
Mm.
They were about 2.2 billion in revenue in 2014. Now this year they're looking at 18 billion.
Oh,
And
goodness.
now being owned by Microsoft, they have such an enormous resource bank to build the products and continue to evolve LinkedIn in kind of the way of how do we have an ecosystem where the world of work spends their time, right, digitally.
I find it so fascinating.
Yeah, so hopefully that's helpful in kind of just
Thank you. All
painting the
right.
picture
Now, thank
on
you.
that one
Now we
misconception.
know everything we need
Yeah.
to know about LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So, we were talking about misconceptions. So, one
Yes.
is, people, this is how I would say it, using it only for job search
Yeah.
is so missing the point, so
Mhm.
um, curtailing the amazing opportunities that you can
Yeah.
have with it, right? So
That's right.
that's misconception
Yep.
one.
Yep.
Anything else you would say?
Yeah.
Uh,
There's probably two others that I'd mention. One is, a misconception of not wanting to come across in the wrong way. If
oh,
people do build out their profile and they do begin to share content, a lot of people don't want to come across as boasting or
Yeah.
having an ego or sharing only their successes, right? In the way that they're perceived on their profile.
Yeah.
So what then happens is they share very little, right? And so that misconception of being able to build your brand and who you are and what you're great at is actually a strength, right? And we should celebrate each other and we should be able to, you know, see what people care about professionally. And, especially small business owners or entrepreneurs, I want to learn about them. I want to know what they're doing. I want to
Yeah.
gain, new perspectives of what I do through other people. And so the more that people do share, right, content, thought leadership, their own branding on LinkedIn, and telling stories through that, it's not egocentric.
Right.
It's not oversharing. It actually helps and enables other people as well as themselves, right? And so I would say that's a still a misconception on the platform of I don't want to use it or I don't want to spend time on there because I might come across the wrong way.
Can I ask you a delicate question about this?
Of course.
So my focus for 20 years has been on supporting professional women. Now I have so many male clients, and I've
Hmm.
always known this, but if we look at my latest book, The Most Powerful You, about the seven damaging power and confidence gaps, men
Yeah.
have them too.
Yeah.
But the latest research that I did, women have them at a higher degree, and they also internalize them differently. But here's what I want
Yeah.
to ask you. I work with this as a coach every day with women and men that
Mhm.
women tend to say, I don't mean to paint all women or all men with the same brush, but women tend to say, I don't want to sound like a braggart. That's the term they will use. Men won't say that to me, but they'll say, well, I'm not sure I should say this because I'm not sure I really did this.
Right.
And I'll say, well, did you or didn't you? I mean, it's pretty clear. And usually
Yeah.
they'll say, well, my team did it. And I'll
Hmm.
say, of course, but you led the team. So
Yeah.
what, so I have to dig it out. But the fear of looking like I'm too overly complimentary,
Yeah.
it comes out differently. Do you see that same thing, John? Or do you see, no,
Yeah.
it's not a gender
Absolutely.
thing. So
Yeah, no,
men
I see it
struggle.
across the
Yeah,
yeah,
tell us.
I see it across the board, right? In many conversations that I either have with organizations or people,
Wow.
my partner, just the different array of people and kind of their perspective of not wanting to turn confidence into arrogance, right? In what they share, but also telling stories and sharing in that human connection is what brings us closer together, right? And if you can do that in an authentic way, even if it's confidence is definitely a strength. I think it's really important in today's world, especially online, because there is so much scripting or over scripting of communication. There is AI that's playing a big role, and so the more human we can be in these interactions and these communications, the better outflow comes from that, right?
I so love it. Can I just insert a tip here, people? For people who struggle. I did a TEDx talk, Time to Brave Up, and in it is an exercise about identifying the 20 facts of you. And
Mm,
what that is the 20 accomplishments that you are most proud of. Not your mother, not your boss, you.
yeah,
And why that mattered to you, what you did. And it could be, you were 8 and you had a lemonade stand that made $100 and you gave it to a charity,
yeah,
but also the skills that you used to create that accomplishment. But the reality is, it's fact that you did it. It's not a lie. So if
yeah,
we can talk about it as fact,
yep. That's
I got
true.
a master's in marriage and family therapy and served as a therapist, that kind of fact. I
Hmm.
think it helps people not feel like they're bragging. It feels like
Right.
they're sharing the facts of them that would be
Yeah.
helpful for someone else to know. And I'm sure in
Yeah.
your branding work, you have all sorts of exercises and ways to help people get at this, right?
Yeah, and I try and tie it with outcomes. When we are sharing facts and stories and things that we've accomplished, if we have an outcome that we want to come from that, I think it helps us be authentic and it helps us to be confident about those things
That's
because it leads into something rather than just sharing to share, right? Or
right.
sharing your wins and your accomplishments to look good. If that's the outcome, then it is going to come across in the wrong way
Right.
and inauthentic and kind of more egocentric. But if you have outcomes that are tied to these stories and experiences as you're the only one who has those lived experiences. When you begin to share those, right, in the right way, other people then attach to those things and they're relevant because they say, oh, I didn't know that about you, but this applies in my life because I'm going through this as well, whether that be, starting a business or becoming a coach or, trying to, find that next job and that career or learn that new skill. There's so many ways that it plays in from other people's stories and experiences and learning from those. I think it's a beautiful thing, I talk a lot about branding on LinkedIn and how to build that professional brand, how to tell people more about what you do and why you do it and grow your business because it's important, right?
Beautifully
And
said.
so, yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Any other misconceptions? Anything else?
The last one I'll share is about people feeling very confident or secure in the job that they have, right? And so not wanting to be on LinkedIn or be active on LinkedIn
Mm.
because, oh, I don't need to because, I work at LinkedIn or I work at Google or I work at Microsoft or whatever company it is. So I don't need to share, I don't need to build my brand or my network, or I don't need to be a thought leader. And where that has played out the most, I would say, in conversations that I've had with dear friends of mine who have worked at great companies, and this is true for myself as well, is that I started being very active in 2014 when I started working at LinkedIn, as I saw an opportunity to kind of create some of that thought leadership on technology and innovation. And I wanted to connect with people that were in the industry and get to know other companies that were doing this really well. And so carrying that through, and then where it really made the most impact on me was when I was part of a global reorg while I was at LinkedIn and I was part of a layoff. And thankfully, I hadn't taken the approach of I don't need to build my network. I know everyone that I need to know at the company. I don't need to increase that thought leadership or share content. Because when I went through that, that was definitely a shock and it was a difficult moment. Thankfully, I actually got offered a job within about a week of that layoff because I shared it about it on LinkedIn.
Wow.
And someone had reached out, a manager had reached out at another organization and said, I've been following you for a number of years and your activity on LinkedIn. And I feel like I know who you are and what you're good at. And so
Wow.
I want to hire you. And so
Wow.
again, that's one area where people would say, well, I don't want to brag about that. But it's a way of saying, these things become more and more important about our lived experiences and how we can share with other people, and why it is important to grow your network and get outside of just the place that you work and share those learnings or those new skills or learn from other people, and get to know, what other people do and maybe what you're passionate about in case of these life experiences that we don't expect, right? And so
Just very
layoffs is,
relevant in my country.
yeah, layoffs is very relevant right now, of course. And so that's a topic where I try and, talk with a lot of friends of mine in the technology world and saying, continue to build your brand, continue to talking, with new people and build that network. And you never know when it might become relevant. It might not be a layoff, but you might want to start a new business. You might want to work in a new industry. And so how's the pathway to get to those things, those outcomes when an experience comes along your way that you weren't expecting?
Oh, I love it. Now, I have a burning question that I have a feeling a good percentage of listeners are thinking. Um, I'm interested in how you shared that you had been laid off, because if
Hmm.
you look at the US, there are so many layoffs.
Yeah.
I know people, and in the vein of being very authentic and transparent as a career and leadership coach, with a focus on women, my world has changed dramatically since January
Yes.
1st. So here's what I want to ask you. Did you come out and say you'd been laid off
Hmm.
in a post?
Yeah.
And I know you're not going to give advice for every single person listening that's going to be, exactly right on. Same with me. Everybody's different, and
Yes. Yeah.
everybody feels differently about it and has a different mindset. But for those who have just been catapulted from their roles,
Yeah.
what would you recommend? Would you recommend that they do a post
Yeah,
or,
I think it's different for different people
yeah,
in how they typically share
right,
and what they are comfortable in doing and how they do it. For me, as I had spent, a number of years, it was 6 years at that point, and I left LinkedIn, and then I actually got asked to come back to LinkedIn and spent another 3 years there. But um, I was of the mindset already that I posted very frequently about, different topics and the world of work for me. And so posting was my natural reaction. And I felt comfortable doing that, right?
right,
In sharing, hey, the time has come for me to explore a new opportunity. I was part of, a global reorg at LinkedIn. It was at the start of COVID. There was a lot happening, around the world. And being able to share that in not a negative way,
right.
I definitely had to rewrite that post a couple of times before I
I'm
posted
glad
it.
you admitted that.
Yeah, because I wanted to come up with the right words that were, true to me and the way that I shared
Wow,
posts, but also to tell the story behind it, right?
wow.
And hopefully help that not only help other people that were impacted, but also help people that were potentially hiring to know what my situation was and what I was then
Brilliant.
interested in. I wouldn't probably recommend that for everyone. If you're someone who doesn't typically post,
Right,
to then just come out and
right, right.
with a post out of nowhere might feel uncomfortable, and not something
Wow.
you want to do. For people who don't want to post publicly about a layoff, because yeah, it's definitely an emotional time and it's stressful. Personally, having lived through those decisions you've got to make, and there is a certain vulnerability about layoffs.
True.
What I would recommend to those people, hopefully listeners of this podcast, but is you can share messages like directly with people on LinkedIn. So if you follow certain people on LinkedIn who inspire you or who are working at companies that you want to work for or are doing things that you want to maybe do, whether that's starting a business or going to coaching or there's so many different ways to do it, is reach out to those people and have a human conversation with them. And then you can explain, hey, this just happened, right? I
Okay.
am now looking for my next move, and you're someone I want to learn from and connect with, and maybe we overlap, and maybe there's something that we can do. And I think that is also really powerful, right?
Oh, I love it
So
so much. And that is exactly the language you shared with me. So
mhm.
that I think is so great. So let's just talk about that. Then I want to talk about kind of the broader personal branding work you do with
Yes,
others.
yes,
But you did say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth because it was perfect.
when we're reaching out to someone that, yes, we already have kind of a warm connection with, it's not a
Yep.
necessarily a cold connection, but it could be.
Mhm.
You gave some words about how you can share wanting to connect with them in a more deeper way. Can you share that? Speaking of overlapping, um, you know,
Yeah, I think
I give it
there's,
away.
ways that you can communicate with people that opens doors to a conversation, right? And I think this is especially true in this scenario, or if you're looking to, partner with an organization or with an individual, and even if it's to sell products and services, through those conversations, those are all outcomes that should come from it. But the way that you can approach a conversation with someone is, in sharing, I've wanted to connect with you, or we are connected already on LinkedIn. Here's a bit about me and where I spend my time. I would love to see if we overlap, right? And can have a conversation. If you do it in that way, people are generally pretty open
Right,
to a conversation, especially in the areas where they see a value share, right?
right.
If so, that's one area.
Love it.
The second area is more about that trust and credibility. Whenever I receive a message or a connection request, the first thing I want to do is then go onto their profile, right? Can I get to trust and credibility of that individual quickly? And so if someone had just been laid off, as an example, and they sent me a message like that, I would then likely go to their profile and say, can I learn something about them and understand why they wanted to connect? If it's someone that is from a completely different industry, never, done a role similar to mine, and I can't find that connect, or we don't have anyone in common on LinkedIn, um, that makes it difficult to get to that trust and credibility because I don't know who they are or why they're really reaching out. Whereas if you've built your brand on LinkedIn and your profile and your network the right way and you share content, when you receive that message, if I can find those things really fast, right? So there's not a lot of work in it initially for that person, I might say to myself, well, there's areas that I think that we overlap. It's worth having a conversation and a
You
meeting
have
from.
just created the perfect um, explanation for what I do 10 times a day. You know, having a big following
Yeah.
there, I'm pitched or reached
Yes.
out to.
Yep.
And that's the first place I go.
Yeah.
But you have given words to what I'm looking for. And let me
Yeah.
see if I got it right. And let's see if
Mhm.
this is helpful, folks. The trust and credibility piece is you're saying you want to reach out. Let me look at who you are presenting yourself to be.
Yes.
Do I have trust that there would be an overlap in the way
Yes.
you're saying there would?
Yep.
Or am I sensing
Yep.
you're trying to just pitch me a service because you don't even know who I am? You know, I can
Absolutely.
tell by how you're writing. And how
Hmm.
about sometimes, I don't mean to bash this, but Sales Navigator, a lot of people use it. Sometimes I'll get the message, dear, parentheses,
Yes.
name. And I want to write them, by the way, dear, you know, you should really make sure your settings are are
That's right.
working.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, that's an
Do that a
immediate,
lot.
delete.
Yeah.
But you're showing how the way in which we show up on LinkedIn communicates so much more than we think it does
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
about who we are, right?
Yeah, and probably the third word I would use, so there's trust, credibility.
Mm.
The third that I'd probably insert into there as well is clarity. Right? I want there to be clarity on both sides. Right? When I'm looking at other people on LinkedIn to get to that trust and credibility, there should be clarity, right? It should
You
be as
mean
clear as
you
possible.
should understand who they are and
Yeah,
the trajectory the best you can, the best they can
that's
share.
right.
Uh-huh.
And hopefully
Values.
then projecting that as well, right? When people look at my company, or they look at my website, or they look at my LinkedIn, or they talk to someone that I know. I might have sent them a message on LinkedIn, and we've got mutual people in common. They might go to that person, say, "How do you know John?" And so, trust, credibility, and clarity. I think really, if you're able to do that, again, there's then a pathway to that conversation. And that's why I mentioned at the beginning, LinkedIn really is a human connection tool,
Oh,
right?
I love it.
It's not just a social media platform. It's not just, somewhere where you can spend a lot of time or a lot of money and even as an organization. But if you view it the right way as a way to connect with the people that you're looking to work with and for and build your brand and grow your business, I think, you know, you can be set up for success.
Oh, I love it. Can I keep you a few more minutes and drill
Of
you?
course. Yeah. Yeah. I'd actually like to just tell a very quick story because I think it relates
Please.
to this scenario. And I've told it before, but it's a story about a guy who's walking down the road and he falls in a hole and he can't get out. And a priest walks past the hole, and the guy in the hole shouts up to the priest and says, "Hi, I'm down here. I can't get out. Can you help me?" And the priest says a prayer over the hole and walks on by. The next person that walks by is a doctor. And again, the individual in the hole shouts up and says, "Hi, doctor, I'm stuck in a hole. I can't get out. Can you help?" And the doctor writes a prescription, throws it in the hole. The third person who walks by is a friend, and a friend of that person who was in the hole. And he shouts up to the friend and he says, "Hey, I'm stuck in a hole. Can you help me out?"
Mm.
The friend jumps in the hole.
No.
He turns to him and he said, "Now we're both stuck here. Why did you jump in?" And the friend says, "Well, I've been down here before and I know the way out." Right?
Oh,
And it's that beautiful story of how human connection and, if someone that you know has been in a similar situation, right? They're looking to change their career, they've been part of a layoff, they're starting a business. Who are the people that we can lean on and learn from and get inspired by? And a lot of that lives on LinkedIn. And then you can take it from LinkedIn and into, proper conversations like this. And we connected 10 years ago, right? And we're now still talking and seeing some of the output of that. So, yeah, I just think that story kind of encapsulates some of that sentiment.
I love it. I'm crying
Yeah.
like I always do. I want to throw a few things out too
Yes.
that I think dovetail on what you're saying. I think the recommendations section of LinkedIn is so powerful. And I'm always looking at what we can do that in the process of doing them get us on the finding brave path and the
Yes.
self-loving and self-appreciate. I don't mean narcissistically. I mean, I love and respect myself.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I see that so many people are very scared to reach out and ask for a recommendation or even write one. People don't want to blow it. But I would say I want to talk about, I think I have 80 plus recommendations there and on the service page. So when you have services, you can create your own service page and people can rate you
Yeah.
with stars and say what they feel about you. But I just want to say, kind of like your beautiful story, it all has a spiritual underpinning. When I was laid off in a brutal way after 9/11, I really felt, I really cracked up, a breakdown moment. And so I appreciate when people share when they're feeling a little vulnerable because that's a hard thing to do. But on LinkedIn about, I got laid off. But the point is, I really felt like I wasn't the best leader because I was going through such a hard time. I was ashamed. There was a lot of
Mhm.
shame. And I believe the very first recommendation I ever got was from someone who was not in my department. And it's
Yeah.
still there. But she said, Kathy was someone who I wanted to be like, as if, look at me, I can't
Oh,
even say
wow.
it without being choked
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
as a
It's
female
beautiful.
leader, senior leader.
Mhm.
I swear to you, that healed a myriad of things for me.
Yeah.
That I wasn't that terrible, that as hard as a time as I was going through, some part of me was still behaving in the way I wished I would. That's what a recommendation can do for you people,
Absolutely.
because we don't have the words about what other people think of us normally. They're
Hmm.
not telling us that.
Yeah.
So I would say to you, if you want to help other people, be generative and generous and give. Just you can
That's right.
go, if you're connected, hit more, and it says request a recommendation or give a recommendation.
Give.
And if you give, it doesn't automatically show up. So if you're worried about, I'm not a good writer, they see it first and they can ask for.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that receiving recommendations has been one of the most kind of career affirming, life affirming things. What do you
Yeah.
think, John?
That's amazing. And it's true. And it's a place that you can share those, right? You can give and receive with the recommendations in a way that you can't on any other platform, right? And
Yeah,
it's very difficult to have that opportunity to share again in a way that is human outside of that. It would be
right.
unnatural in a conversation to read out a recommendation that you got from someone.
Right.
And the other part that it makes me think about is how your brand and who you are, right? And those recommendations, the words that people use about you, follows you through your career, follows through, you know, through your life, really. But, I think that there's this quote that relates to it by Jeff Weiner, who was the former CEO at
Mm.
LinkedIn. But his quote is trust equals consistency over time. Right. And so if we pair that with these recommendations, these words, and these affirming things from other people about us, it then carries into your profile, how you present yourself, how your brand then carries into conversations with other people. And so when, you know, Kathy, if you were to reach out to someone that I'm connected with and say, tell me about John, right? Um, I'm sure some of those words in the recommendations that are used or how you kind of present your brand and how you've been in words and actions through your career, they all carry in the same way, right? And so, that's what that makes me think of. And the trust equals consistency over time is that, you know, over a long period of time, if you've been consistent in what you do, who you are, what your skills are, what you're passionate about, how you've helped people, all right, how people have helped you, and telling those stories, you'll get to the trust piece, right? Trust is just then a natural outcome, right, from
Really
those things.
true.
So,
It's so
yeah,
true. And I think it has so much more meaning than just what we do on LinkedIn. So there's something I want to say that relates to that. There's a lot of people that I'm in the circle of who are the best coaches in the world or whatever.
yeah.
Some of them I read their material and it doesn't speak to me. The language doesn't land,
Hmm.
or I rub up against it. The whole
Yeah,
point is, are they wrong? No. They have a set of values in the way they
that's right.
communicate that has a million, 10 million followers. But I think where I'm going here is when you are the real you as much as you can be, you're going to attract the people that you're going to love to work with and support or
Absolutely. Yeah.
hire, and they're going to love connecting with you. And that is not everyone.
Yes.
How could
That's
it be?
exactly it. Yeah.
We're unique. So I
Hmm.
always love to say, a lot of people don't see it, but you are as different from other people as your thumbprint. There's no one
Right.
like you. So the
Yeah.
more you can be you and communicate that, it's a filter for,
Yes.
this person, their values, the way they talk to people, that doesn't really jive with well,
Yeah.
it's a filter. They'll look at my stuff and go, yeah, no, that doesn't
Right.
work. So this is why it's so important. If you really, and we talked about this before, I really do think it's like the big cocktail party in the sky.
Yes.
Wouldn't
Yeah.
you want, and it could be a coffee shop too. It doesn't have to be alcohol. But wouldn't you want to be in the room with the 500 or the 1,000 or the 5,000 people that inspire you and uplift you and feel
Absolutely.
like they get you?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what we can do on LinkedIn. Now,
Yeah.
now I've kept you, but I want to talk about helping professional athletes. I'm dying to know about that. But before that, anything else you would give people as a first step to
Hmm.
bringing their brand, their personal brand forward? Anything that we haven't touched on that I may not even know, being on there 100 hours a week, that you know,
Yeah, I think the first thing is getting clarity on outcomes, right?
the outcomes you deliver and you support?
Yeah, the outcomes that you want to achieve on LinkedIn.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I think the more you get clear on what you want to get from the platform, the easier it is then to kind of reverse engineer it and say, well, what then do I need to do, right, to get to those things? So there's a couple of, simple examples would be, if you're looking to, you know, get better, leads or potential customers using LinkedIn. You're a small business owner.
Right.
The outcome is more business, right?
Right.
You want to grow your business, but with the right people, the right clients, and right leads. So if that's the outcome, then you just have to go backwards and say, well, how do I get there, right? You hopefully again have started to build that brand profile, right? Of who you are, what you do, and that can be on your company page as well. Make that as clear as possible so that when
Right.
you do reach out to people, or they go to your profile, they're seeing that overlap, right, as quickly as possible.
Got it.
And they're getting to the trust and credibility. Then it's usually, that focus and that targeting of who do you sell to? What types of customers are you looking to attract?
Mm.
Well, if you know that, you can do that on LinkedIn very easily, right? With the right companies, the right people that are in the roles that can make decisions related to what you're selling as a service or a product, and then having proper conversations, getting introductions into those people with people that you mutually know. You then just start on these, steps and processes to get to that outcome. The another example would be, I work with a number of people who care about nonprofits and foundations that they're either involved in or they care about, and they want to elevate those. So if the outcome is elevating or bringing more awareness to the foundation or nonprofit that you're involved in, is what then do you need to do beforehand? What's the type of communication you need to put out?
Right.
Who
Wow.
else might be interested? And then you just kind of backtrack and saying, well, what do I need to do today to get to that outcome? And so when I am on LinkedIn, the time that I'm spending is, valuable, it's, productive, and I'm getting closer to those outcomes rather than, you've probably seen this, but on YouTube, if I go on YouTube and I'm watching a video, the right-hand side rail has so many other videos that I want to, watch and learn about. And so I get very distracted. The same is on LinkedIn. You can get distracted and not get any closer to your outcomes if you don't know what those outcomes are.
So
Right? And
true.
so that's kind of the advice I would give if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, if you're working in corporate and you're trying to sell products and services. There's ways that you can do it in a human, authentic, thought leader way that is still pretty much an untapped opportunity on LinkedIn for a lot of
Oh,
people.
so valuable. I'm going to throw in also, it, again, it's a spiritual concept, not religious, spiritual. I would also think about, how do I want to say this? Can I be of help to others?
Yeah, yeah,
If you could
absolutely.
just include that as an underlying
Mhm.
feeling in the outcomes you want,
Yes, absolutely.
I really believe that that is a very potent part. Because if
Hmm.
we're only coming with our hand out, even if we do it
Yep.
nicely,
Yeah.
everything is energy and people feel that. So I don't mean you should try to be helpful just so you can be helped. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a life-changing experience as well.
Yep. Yep.
I would
Yeah.
throw
And,
that
and
in.
and there's a lot of genuine people
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, and good humans help good humans, right? And
Yeah.
usually there is a value share of I'm not giving just to get, but I'm gonna give, and anything that comes from that person might introduce me to someone one day who will then change my life or change my career. They might be, someone that I partner with, or so much can come from it if your intentions are right and they're at a human level,
It's so
can
true.
can I help or be of service to other people, not expecting something but knowing how the world works, things
Yes.
usually come back in a good way.
I
I
had
believe.
I had that happen just this week that a person
Yeah,
from 10 years ago that I worked with saw that I was connected with someone who had an open role. And she
amazing.
said, would you be open to sending my resume? I did. And this to the person who I adore, but had not been in touch with. Well, wouldn't you
Yeah,
know, we're on the calendar now next week to speak because
amazing.
this is how it works, people. This is
Mhm.
it. Oh, I love it. I love everything you're saying. Now, John, tell us, if you don't mind, a little bit about
Yeah, sure.
serving professional athletes, then I'll let you go.
Sure. So, I'm a kind of avid sports fan,
What's
and
your
so
favorite sport?
is soccer. I grew up, 10 minutes from my local team, Brighton, and used to watch them play every week. And now I live in Canada. I still watch them play every week, but on TV. And
Oh,
you know, and
love
um,
it.
and so I have a couple of friends who played professional football, soccer, and
Wow.
they all told me the same thing in the last year, which was when I retired. Um, Either they made the decision or they got injured with a few of them.
Wow.
When they hung up their boots, the phone stopped ringing, and that to them was very scary, right? But a reality for them, right? Of what do I now do, right? Because their identity had been wrapped
Right.
up in the sport, and that needs the dedication and focus um,
Wow.
and everything around it while you're playing professionally.
Wow.
But they hadn't expanded their network outside of the game. They hadn't built a brand outside of their identity of being a professional athlete.
Wow.
They hadn't learned those new skills or put content together about what they cared about or were passionate about, again, outside of the game.
Wow.
And so this led into more and more conversations with professional athletes across different sports who, the former athletes would all say that pretty much the same thing. How do I then tell those stories or talk about my lived experiences in sport that then can help me get to those outcomes of finding a new career or uh, building awareness around, the nonprofit or foundation that I work in. Um, and with current players, it's helping start that conversation early, right? There's a lot of professional athletes that I partner with and work alongside who are investors or they've started a company while they're still playing. And so for them, it's really important that they're building their brand all the way through while they have a platform so that they can then, you know, move into that next transition whenever that comes with ease because they've built the right network. They
Right.
have built something else outside of their game, knowing that, for a certain amount of people, they're known as that professional athlete, and that's again a very good thing. But
Right.
it's how can they leverage that to build upon that what their future world of work needs to look like,
What
right?
an important service you're giving.
Yeah, and
I
it's great
think,
fun for me because I love sport and
oh my goodness,
get to kind
anybody
of
listening here
merge
who
the two
needs this
together.
or knows an athlete, professional athlete who wants to, really look at the next chapter.
Yeah.
And I think if we can do that even before we have to,
Yes.
it's enlivening in every way.
Yeah, and it relates back to everything really we've spoken about,
Right.
right? It's not this isn't just a case for professional athletes and
No.
their transition out of sport or beyond sport is just for them. It's for all of us really in creating what our future world of work is and what we want that to look like. For me, I
Mm,
started out in finance. I was not very good at it, people say, but I did it because it was a job, and I had work in there. But I wanted to then move into technology, but I
right.
didn't have the network. I didn't know people in the right companies or in the right roles. I hadn't gone to university for technology. My skill set wasn't there. Right? So transitioning from finance to technology, there was a big gap, right? And a lot of people helped me along the way and helped open doors for me, and I'm very grateful and thankful for that because that changed my career. However, can we make that process easier for people, whatever they do now, to what they want to do next, right?
That's
And I
so
think
important.
helping transition, people within their career. If they've worked in the corporate world for many, many years, like you did, and then you became a business owner, like that transition is difficult. I've now done that, and you recognize the things that you need to learn, and the people that you need to know, and you need clarity on what you actually do or what you provide to get to that outcome. Again, I know I've spoken a lot about outcomes, but I think if you know the outcomes and you're clear about what they are in any area of your life, then the creating the pathway to get there becomes so much easier.
John, on that amazing end note, where can we soak up everything? Who wouldn't want to work with you, honestly? Wow. So where do people go? Where do they connect with you? Where do they read about your work? Where do they hire you? Where do they go?
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time on the LinkedIn platform, and I share a lot of content on there. And I think it's fantastic, as we talked about, as a networking tool, or to get kind of connected with the right people. And so people can find me on LinkedIn, and also on my website. I share kind of some of my thought leadership and content on those channels as well.
Great.
And
We'll
yeah,
link to those
are the
below.
main
And
places.
I'll make a request. If people reach out to you, John, put in the note that they
Yes.
heard you on this podcast, and do one more thing. Add one line of thought leadership about what spoke to you about this conversation. When we connect and share a little bit of why what you said
Mhm.
spoke to me, we're building that credibility and that trust, right? Would you agree?
Right.
Now you're going to get inundated, but
Absolutely.
thank you for being
Yeah.
here, John. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much. I've
What
enjoyed it.
I love so much of what you share, all of it. All
Amazing.
right, people. Questions, questions, questions. Again, if you don't have questions, I don't think we're digging deep enough. But so reach out to me, reach out to John. I hope this moves you forward, and I cannot wait. Share with me. Okay, I started sharing differently on LinkedIn. What do you think? I'm on there constantly, so let me look at you too, and let me give you my thoughts, and let's connect there. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank
Here's
you.
to, John, here's to your future of work in a way that's joyful and rewarding. See you next time. Have a wonderful Finding Brave 2 weeks. Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us today. And please don't forget to check out findingbrave.org for more programs, resources, and tips. And tune in next time for your weekly dose of Finding Brave.